So this thing was huge. She started actually getting rattled and she was scared. You need to take me inside right now. I was speechless. I couldn't really say anything. My name is Les Baldridge. And for me, it started probably in April of 1977. That's when the In Search of show came out with Bigfoot on it. And I grew up in the Sierra Nevada mountains near Yosemite. So from that point on, I was hooked because I was in the mountains all the time with my family. So I was done at that point.
So your interest was through TV and just the general vicinity of where you lived.
Correct. Yes.
So from there, from 1977, when you first were introduced to the idea, what did you do from there to that took you more deeply into the Bigfoot subject?
So we were in the mountains all the time. My dad and I, my brother, my uncle and his kids, um, we were all the time in the mountains. So at that time, I would have been 77. I would have been eight. No, I'm sorry, seven. But all the time after that, when we were in the mountains, basically, I was looking for Bigfoot. Uh, and I was the youngest, so I wasn't so much, uh, as you'd say, I wasn't so much doing the hunting end of it. I was actually looking all the time when we were there for Bigfoot.
What were you finding?
I never really found anything until about 79. It would have been deer season in 79 or 80. It's been so long I can't remember, but that's when I had my sighting was then.
Well, let's go into detail and tell me about this sighting in 1979.
So we camped in Big Creek, which is in Blue Canyon, near Yosemite, and we took off. My dad and I, my brother, we took off for a hunting spot that my dad wanted to be at. So we went there. That's roughly an hour from camp. On 4-wheel drive paths and logging roads, things of that nature. Um, and Dad wasn't super happy with that spot that morning, so he said, "Hey, we're gonna move to a different spot." So it was always logging roads, always. And Dad had an old '68 Scout, and he could go anywhere in that country in that thing. So we knew that this particular road was um, not traveled hardly at all because it was only people that had the ability, to get in there, the vehicle and the knowledge to get in there. So we were on our way, and my job was to be looking up the mountain, and my brother and my dad were looking down the mountain as we're taking this logging road that has basically been pretty much overgrown. You couldn't go more than 5 or 10, 15 miles an hour was the fastest you could go. But I'm looking up the mountain, and I see I see this huge. I thought it was a man at first, but and then I didn't know what I was seeing. But this thing was running down the mountain, and when it got to the road, well, you can't really call it a road, but I don't know. I would say it was 10 to 15 feet across, and it literally from the left side it leapt and it went over the entire road and landed on the other side and just kept going. I mean, and it took off at an angle um, into the brush. And my father and my brother never saw any of it. They were they were looking down the hill, and it veered away towards the area we were going to into the brush, so they didn't see anything.
So
Um,
describe to me what you saw exactly.
so this thing was huge. It was at least because I went back to the area once I got bigger. My dad. We'll get into to everything that happened after my sighting with my dad, but uh, it was massive in the shoulders. It was the classic, everything you hear about. It was brownish to cinnamonish hair, um, huge long arms, and it was fast. It was super fast. And of course, growing up there, I had seen everything there was. By that age, I had seen cougars, everything, deer, turkey, bear, you name it. I had seen all of it by that time, and so I was very familiar and knew all the animals.
Yeah, so you saw it. How did you convey that to the rest of them that were out there with you?
Well, that's where it starts to get a little interesting.
Okay.
Um, well, my dad, he's driving. He's like, say, he's going down the path there, and I was speechless. I couldn't really say anything. I didn't know what to do. I was just trying to gather myself, I guess, more than anything. And by the time I was able to just even tap him on the shoulder, because I was sitting in those scouts, there's bench seating along the side of the vehicle there in the back behind the driver, and he took the seats out in the back. There's a seat that goes across, but he would take that out for deer season. So I finally tap him on the shoulder, and Dad, you need to stop. You need to stop. And he turned around, and he's looking at me. He sees the look on my face, and he knew something was going on. He just didn't know what. And so once I finally got it out, this is what I saw. Well, he stopped and he said, "Okay." He says, "You know what? I'm gonna go walk back there. I'm gonna see what I can find." And he did. He told me and my brother both. My brother is 7 years older than me, so he would have been around, I don't know, 15, 16, in that area. But he said, "You two stay in the scout. I'm gonna go see what I can find." And there was nothing he couldn't track. I mean, nothing. Um, he was gone for approximately 45 minutes to an hour, and he said he couldn't find sign of anything, nothing.
Why do you think that was?
I don't know. That has always kind of intrigued me because of the fact that I saw it clear the road. I saw where it took off from. I saw where it landed and how it moved after it landed and angled, up towards the area we were going into the brush off to the right side of the road. It's very, very thick. The brush is super thick in so much of that area up there. Um, but that brush was at least a good 30 feet from the road, 15, 30 feet from the road. So for him not to find anything, I mean, I've seen my dad track deer, big bucks that had done the exact same thing. I've seen him track those deer down and get them, to be able to harvest them. So to answer your question, I don't know how that was possible.
Well, when he came back, what did he have to tell you? What were his words?
So my dad was never ever a believer at all. So he said, "Son, I don't know what you saw, what you think you saw, but uh, as far as I can tell, you didn't see anything. Uh, you know, I know obviously you think you saw something. I can tell by the way you're acting, but uh, there was never really after that. If you'd have to kind of know my dad, he was old school, from Oklahoma and grew up in the woods and trapping and fishing and hunting all his life, and he just didn't believe in such things. So yeah, he just basically it was over for him then.
Well, how about your brother? How did he respond?
Kind of did the older brother thing for a long time. Kind of would make fun of me at times. A little, what big brothers do, and he didn't see it. And so you know he just kind of would mess with me a little bit about it, to be honest. Do that kind of thing.
Did you guys ever go back there for hunting or whatever?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a very popular place for our family because, we knew that there were big deer in there all the time. And like I said, I went back later on. It's what you see what a lot of researchers do. They go and they use say like a tree, a marker on a tree, or a branch coming off a tree to kind of get an idea of the size of the subject. And that's what I did later on, once I got into my teen years, and I was going up into those areas by myself or with friends, and that that particular subject was at least 8 feet tall.
And no one else ever went with you for these measurements or to see if you could see any more signs of Bigfoot up that way?
I did. I did have one of my best friends from high school. We played football together, and we were always in the mountains together. And he would go. We would go together a lot, and do that kind of thing. Basically, he was about the only friend I had that would even entertain the idea of something like that. But he grew up in the mountains too, and so he knew, look, there's something out there. We just don't know what it is, kind of thing.
How about your other acquaintances and friends that were hunters and maybe out in that area as well, or other areas in the neighborhood? But did anyone else ever see anything up that way?
Not to my knowledge, and to be honest with you, at that time, it was still one of those taboo subjects that people didn't want to talk about, um, for fear of ridicule, I think.
Well, being so young and having seen this, having this sighting at such a young age, and then of course as a teenager you go back and you're trying to kind of, I guess, clarify what it was that you saw, or the size of it anyway. Did that then propel you to do further research as you grew older?
Oh, absolutely. From that point on, I did, uh, in school. I would do reports, things of that nature. I would do just research on my own kind of thing. I read a lot of books, a lot of books. And so that got me even deeper into it. And then, there were things that did happen when I was back in there. I never had another sighting, but there would be, you're back in there, and I know you're really not supposed to go, walking deep back into the forest by yourself, hunting stuff like that. But I would go off trail. I would go back in where I felt like other people weren't going, because it gave me a better chance to get a better buck. And I would be in places that, uh, the classic, you hear everything went silent, even the bugs, the birds, nothing. And then, you just have the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And then, I did have the horrible, terrible stench smell, like the dog that was wet, that was rotten, that kind of thing. Um, I've had that happen there, in that area, not in the exact place, but in the area. Um, I never had any vocalizations that I can remember, and I never had any rocks thrown at me. But I definitely knew, there were a few times that I was being watched, and I just didn't know who or what.
Did you ever see any structures or anything like that in the area?
I didn't, and I will tell you though, I didn't know about those kinds of things at the time. Um, so I can say, if I did, it didn't, translate for me, because I wasn't looking for, I was just straight up looking for either footprints or an actual Bigfoot.
So have you had any other encounters or any kind of interaction since that time, not in that area necessarily, but even in other areas?
Well, so, roughly, 20 years ago now, I moved to Oklahoma, central Oklahoma. I'm 45 minutes, I'm sorry, west of Tulsa. And my brother is roughly in the same area. We have a lot of family here. My dad and his brother moved from here to California, and then ended up coming back later on in life. My brother and I did the same thing. So here where I live, we live on 170 acres, and I have had some vocalizations here. Um, I've had a few strange occurrences here. I have had the feeling of, okay, I need to not be in this area if, when I'm out exploring things like that. But the vocalizations were the big thing. Um,
What did they sound like? What were they? What type?
uh, you know, that's the thing. They didn't sound anything like the Sierra tapes, like Ron Moorhead's recordings. They were. I honestly think they were juveniles. There was more than one. There was one that started off to my left, out in the brush, probably, and it's really super thick here. But it was probably 30, 35 yards from me. And then another one I heard they started talking to one another, and this one was to my right and back in the brush, probably a good 60 yards away at least is where that tree line is. But it was just kind of like a, really hard to put it. Um Kind of not a yell that wasn't loud. It was like they were trying to conversate, and not, it wasn't in a aggressive tone. It wasn't loud, but it was uh you know loud enough that I could hear clearly, and it was like a mumble kind of thing. But the problem is that I live so far out in the country, in the woods, that, and and the fact that we're on 170 acres, there's nobody around us. Um, we had a get together earlier that day. There was a bunch of people here, and then everybody had left. And this was about 2 hours after everybody had left. I was just sitting out back, relaxing because it had been a long day. I'd been cooking all day, and I'm sitting there, and my wife came out. They had already started. Pardon me. They had already started, and I acted like I didn't hear them because I wanted them to keep going. I wanted to continue hearing whatever it was that I was hearing. And so then my wife came out, and I didn't tell her what was going on because they weren't doing it. As soon as she came out, they weren't doing anything. And then just a few minutes later, they started back up. And I told her, just act like you don't hear anything. And then after a few minutes, she started actually getting rattled, and she was scared. And she said, "You need to take me inside right now." And so I did. I took her inside.
So about how long did you listen to this then overall?
Overall, it was probably at least 10 minutes, between just myself and then with her as well. And again, it was more of just like mumbling, kind of chatter. Um, Never super loud, never anything like aggressive, just just chatter basically, mumbling.
Was
But
it when I think of mumbling, I think of more of a low rumble kind of sound. When I think of chatter, I think of more of a high pitch. Was it which would you say describes that the most? Was it a high pitch sound or a lower pitch?
lower pitch to me, it was definitely lower. So yeah, I would say more mumbling and drawn out mumbling, if you will. Um, I'm sure Scott Nelson, if I'd been able to get a recording of it, I'm sure Scott Nelson would have had something interesting to say about it. Um, but I didn't have my phone with me. I was just out there relaxing. So
Hmm. Yeah, and that was an isolated experience. You never heard that again.
I have not heard that again. I do go out quite often just to relax because our backyard is basically the woods. Um, so yeah, I do go out there quite a bit. I haven't in the last month because of the weather, but um, I do. If it weather's not bad, I'm out there. Um, I have had experiences out there where I knew I was being watched. I did think there was a night was I was out under an overhang that we have on the back out there, and I had I think it was a couple of pork butts in the smoker, and I could have swore that there were some pebbles that came that were tossed. But the problem with that is that it just barely began to storm very lightly before the storm came in. So could it have been that? Yeah, but I saw one of the pebbles, so I was like, oh, that's interesting.
That is interesting. So your wife heard this mumbling too, and she got a little unnerved and needed to go in. You didn't go back outside after you guys went in?
I didn't. I basically, I just said, okay, I'm not gonna let's we've been out here what a year and a half at that time, and I said, okay, that maybe they're getting used to us, maybe there is some Bigfoots here, and maybe they're just getting used to us. I don't want to push. So I kind of took that approach, and I didn't go back out. Maybe I should have with my phone. I don't know, but I chose not to. I felt like I would have been pushing, so I didn't.
Have you seen anything on your land, like the structures or footprints or anything like that?
I've seen, I have seen what I believe is at least a partial print. Um, I was out exploring and I came across, it was after a storm, a few days after a storm, so I thought it would have been a good time to go and possibly get some, see a good print. And as the soil was softer, kind of thing. So I did find what I thought was a partial print. I could clearly see the big toe and the toe next to it, and then everything else was kind of obscured. As you know, some of the terrain here in Oklahoma can be a little rocky under the surface, so it got obscured that way. I haven't really found any stick structures on this property. I have looked, not really extensively, but I haven't found any to speak of.
How about your neighbors? Do you know anyone around there that's had any type of activity?
I don't, but then again, to our east, I don't have a neighbor, and to the west, the neighbor is a mile away, so mile away. I haven't met them, to be honest. So I can't answer that question. What I can say is the gentleman that used to live in this home, I know him. He lived here a long time. He said he never experienced anything, but he did say that his niece would come out here and go camp because she had some experiences on this property, and that she had seen a Bigfoot here, and so she would come out and she would go camp over the weekend and try to get another sighting, but he didn't personally.
Did you ever talk with her personally?
I have not. I have not. But I went to him. He's one of my customers, and I went to him and I said, hey, this is going to sound a little strange. And this was after the vocalizations had happened. I said, hey, did you ever have anything strange happen to you out there, the whole time you lived there? And that's when he said no, that he hadn't, but his niece had.
Did he describe what she had seen or her experience?
He didn't go into great detail because he kind of, you could tell that he was one of those guys that he doesn't believe. So he said, yeah, she always talked about Bigfoot and this and that out there, but I don't believe any of that. So she would just tell me she saw a Bigfoot, and that's why she was out there camping all the time. So that's about all he really had to say about it.
Did your dad and brother ever believe you that you'd actually had that sighting and and had these vocalizations on your place? Have you ever talked to them about that further?
So my dad was never ever a believer, and matter of fact, he made the comments. Well, he's gone now. He's been gone a couple of years, but he made the comment that, look, I've been everywhere there is to go up there in those hills. I've trapped. And he would take off for 6 months a year and be gone trapping. And he said, look, son, there's nothing up there. Okay, you're wasting your time. Whereas my uncle, his brother, which they were inseparable, and he would do the same thing. He would go up there with him for 6 months of the year. near Yosemite. And now he would tell me, look, I've had a few strange things happen. I don't know what happened, but here's what it was. And like one night, his trailer got shaken pretty violently for a few minutes, and it was a small trailer, like the rounded off trailers, the old kind. And he said, I don't know what it was. It was the middle of the night. I don't know what was going on. He said, all I know is that by the time I got out with my hunting rifle, that whatever it was gone. And that's the only thing my uncle ever told me.
So he just
Uh,
had that one experience is all your uncle ever had up there.
yes, yes. Now, and again, these two guys, my dad and my uncle, they're at that time they're young men. They're 45, and they're both over 6 foot, and they're both pretty well put together guys. And so it'd be foolish for somebody to go up there and mess with their trailer like that.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. Yeah.
I don't see it happening whatsoever. But not to mention, they always had dogs that were. Well, my uncle did. My dad didn't really do dogs, but my uncle always had at least one dog that was um, very protective of him. So
Was the dog with him the night the trailer was shaking?
no, he was up there. It was just him, and that was what was odd about it. He never went to the hills. If my dad wasn't with him, he always had one of those dogs with him. But he didn't have the dog that night or that trip. He would have been up there for a little bit. So I did that one. Always kind of stuck with me. The dog wasn't there, so I found that interesting. That maybe the other times when the dogs were around, I call them the big people. Maybe the big people didn't want to mess with them. I don't know.
The night at your house when you heard the mumbling, did you have any dogs or other animals? And if so, did they react to that?
No, I didn't at the time. No dogs, no animals. There have been cattle on this property, but there weren't any at that time.
Do you have dogs now? Do you have any other type of animals there that have reacted to anything that you couldn't explain?
We do have a German Shepherd now, but she hasn't had. There hasn't been anything happen. She's more of an inside dog, to be honest. She goes out to do her thing, and then I take her out and run her and stuff like that. But there's never been anything like that. No kind of reaction with her.
Well, it sounds like that mumbling was kind of an isolated experience, and whatever was going on, they're just not, at least not close up to your house.
From the back door, that would be the closer one would have been probably from my back sliding door, probably 45 yards or so, and then the other, like I say, it would have been around 60 yards in that area off to the right.
Do you get out on your land much, away from the house?
I do as much as I can. Um, I don't get to do it as much as I would like due to work, but yeah, I do when I can. There's trails on the land, and there's veins of the property that go low, and like where the cows go down and all that, and so um, there's a pond, there's a creek, so I go explore as much as I can.
Mhm. You have quite a bit of wildlife on there, deer and such on your land.
Oh yes, there's deer. There's I haven't seen pigs. There are turkeys, coyotes all over the place, and a lot of pygmy rattlesnakes. Seems like.
Well, that wouldn't be too fun, but what else
Yeah.
can you tell me from all of your reading and your research and just I'm sure being around people that know something about Bigfoot, especially in Oklahoma. There's a lot of activity in Oklahoma, it seems like. What else can you tell me about what you've experienced?
Well, there's a guy I talked to a lot down in southeastern Oklahoma, Broken Bow, and he's an elder of the tribe down there, and he he does things. He has a site on Facebook. I won't name it or any of that, but he's the guy that they call when they're having problems with a Bigfoot down there, such as at their homes. And then he goes as far as talking about to me, look, they try to set traps for kids down there, like they're trying to take kids and that kind of thing. I don't know, how much of that is actually going on, but that he talks about that kind of thing. For me, my biggest question is what are they, and what is their purpose here?
What do you think?
Well, I have to be honest. For forever, I thought they were just a North American great ape until David Paulides came along, and then he said the words, "Somebody show me an ape or gorilla bone in North America," and then, of course, nobody can show him those bones. So that clicked in my head. I thought, "Oh my goodness!" And then when you start hearing, okay, every indigenous tribe, every tribe in America, they don't call them anything but people, another race of people. That's massive. That's huge.
Yeah. But going back to this guy that he's called in when they have a problematic issue with Bigfoot, what did he tell you he did? How did he help resolve those problems?
So he goes in there fully loaded with guns and that kind of thing, which has kind of curbed my talking to him somewhat because of the fact that I'm anti-kill. I don't believe in it. I've never heard of a Bigfoot being aggressive, by the way, in that nature. So that's why I have a little bit of a problem believing that. But I'm not saying that anything's possible. I mean, of course, anything can happen, but because we don't know anything about what these creatures are, or people, or are they creatures, are they aliens, or what are they? So, yeah, he goes in there loaded with assault rifles, things of that nature, and sets traps and does things like that, and then he's invited me to go down to what he calls his habitat, and again, the problem is I'm anti-kill, and I don't want to really put myself in something like that.
Has he told you if he's actually shot one of these things or killed one?
He has told me he's shot at several. He says that he has hit some. I don't. This is where the whole quantum physics comes in, because if they have the ability to do that kind of thing, how is it that you're going to shoot a Bigfoot? So, and then that's where Ron Moorhead, his knowledge comes into play. I mean, if they have the ability to transfer their power and into the quantum physics end of it, and I guess change form, how do you shoot one?
Well, did this Native American, does he tell you that he hasn't actually told you that he was able to kill one and find a body or anything like that?
No, no.
He just said he shot at them.
Yes, and he did tell me he has hit several, but again, I don't. He never has told me that to answer your question. No, he doesn't. He's never said I killed one, and we drug it off or whatever, any of that.
But he also
But
hasn't told you that, we shot one and it just disappeared in front of his face either, right?
he hasn't. No, he hasn't. No.
Yeah, just not that much information about what actually takes place down there. And yes, Ron Moorhead, does believe that there is, some truth in this, whatever strangeness there is about Bigfoot, that some people really have some unusual experiences. Now, you haven't had like the disappearing experience or anything like that, right?
I have not. I haven't had any mind speak happen to me. No, I haven't had any of that. But I am definitely open to the the possibility that they can do that, because who really knows what these beings are capable of. I, I'm that guy that if somebody says they're an expert in the Bigfoot field, I pretty much don't really tune them in, because who could be an expert?
Yeah, there's a lot of iffy information out there right now, and you just kind of have to take what people are experiencing and kind of go with what little limited mysterious information we have so far. Now, have you seen any of the orbs or craft or UFO or anything like that?
I did, and earlier when we were talking about Sierra Nevada mountains, I did, with my best friend. We saw one of the triangle crafts up there. It was night. It was the middle of the night. We did not see a Bigfoot. We didn't see or hear anything like a Bigfoot, but we did see one of the triangle crafts. It was one of those things where we were in front of the campfire, and we were just kind of talking, and then one of us looked up, and there it is. Couldn't hear it. There was nothing. It was just there. I would say it's probably 500 feet, maybe 1,000 feet above us, tops, but it was just there, moving very slowly, and that was kind of different. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Could you tell a color? Was it dark? I mean, how could you determine the the shape?
so when you're up there in those mountains, the stars, it's like they're right there, and you can pick one like a berry, right? And so it was low enough that obviously we could see it. It was dark in color, but the thing is, it blacked out the stars in a triangle. So we knew that it was one of the triangle shape, um, whatever it was, whether it was a UFO or whatever it was. But yeah, and it was moving slow, and you couldn't hear anything.
But there were no lights on it per se.
I remember just a few lights, but it wasn't like airplane lights at all. It was totally different. Um, it was they were just kind of like orangish, that kind of thing.
Did anything else happen that night that you saw this?
No, no. I mean, we saw a bear, but that was about it. He just kind of came by camp and kept going. A place called Dinky Creek is right there that goes through the mountains in that area, and we were camped next to it. So it's going to be popular for all animals at night, that kind of thing. So we saw a bear, but that was it.
And no sound, no missing time, no unusual things happened otherwise.
No missing time. There was no sound. Couldn't hear anything. You know, um, we just, like I say, we just looked up, and there it was, and very interesting. It was very, it's like, okay, did you see that? Yeah, I saw that. Did you see that? That was the way it went.
And you haven't had any other UFO sightings.
Not in particular, no. I've never. You asked about orbs. I've never seen any orbs. For whatever reason. Um, I don't know why that would be, but I just wonder if maybe that's some of their energy. Some of the I call them the big people. I wonder if that's some of their energy.
So why do you call them the big people? I don't think I've ever heard that term before.
Um, I don't want to say that I coined that phrase. I don't know that I've heard anybody use it, but because of the Indians, all the like we were talking about earlier, how the tribes, all the tribes, talk about them as another race of people. So I guess that's after I started listening to David Paulides and everything he had to do with the Hoopa project and all that. I kind of just started referring to them as the big people.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people do believe that, that they're very much a different form of human.
I mean, if you look at the DNA evidence, that's what exactly what the evidence says. Um, I think about the only thing I can come up with is the fact that um, they possess knowledge that has been long forgotten, things that we could probably do, but we don't have the knowledge to do, kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. So if they were discovered and disclosure were made, how do you think people's attitudes and legalities and things like that would change?
I still don't think people would believe it. Um, I think that probably 80 to 85% of the people out there are of the opinion, I need a body. I need to, I got to physically touch, and be able to see this to believe it. And then some people may still not believe it. Um, that's really, that's the way I feel about it. Um, which is unfortunate.
Let's say you do have a body. Let's say that there is a body found and there's disclosure around that. What do you think would change? What do you think would happen then?
I think obviously the lumber industry would be greatly affected. Economically, that that industry would be hit very hard because okay, now we have this is the habitat of these creatures or these people. Um, so what happens then? Which is why I think a lot of the people that protect that industry have gone to great lengths to kind of conceal some things, and so so is the U.S. Forest Service as far as that goes. I mean, and that's widely known, right?
Yeah, and what do you think about I know you don't feel like that there's any danger from them, but do you think that there's could be some motivation with the Forest Department of not really wanting that information out there because of the fear that might create in people?
It might, yeah. I mean, there is. I'm sure with some of the things that have come out here in the last 10 years that there's people that won't go into the forest now because of some things they've heard. I'm sure of that, because that's just the world that we live in today, right? So, um, but on the other side of that too, uh, I do believe that they're going to have their own personalities. It's like we have good humans and we have horrible humans, and so and we have everything in between. So I do believe that they're probably the same way. And you hear about seeing different color Bigfoots, and some have different facial features, that kind of thing. So I believe, I'm not going to say that every Bigfoot out there is not going to be aggressive because there's no way of knowing that completely.
True. Yeah, it's difficult to say. I mean, I do hear far more stories of Bigfoot that is very territorial, yes, and intimidating, but not harmful. Doesn't seem to come after people and hurt them, even though they could. It appears, but they don't. I hear a few stories of aggression, a few stories of danger, a few stories where people have been harmed, but it's far and few between that I actually hear those testimonials.
Well, yeah, and that goes back to, for me, if you start talking about the Patterson-Gimlin film, um, for me, and of course that was on that In Search of show that I watched in 1977. That was the first time I'd ever seen that. I didn't know it existed, but you know, uh, that was only 10 years after the film was made, and so here's another thing that just draws me in is that the fact that the greatest costume designers in Hollywood at that time, they couldn't make anything close to that, and they've gone on record saying that. They went on record saying that a long time ago. So um for two rodeo cowboys and ranchers to come up with a costume that is that detailed, not to mention there's breasts on the, if it's a costume, who's going to think of putting that on a costume in 1967?
Yeah, I think the best argument for that is the one where, that this is a female, she has breast. If you're going to do a costume, you probably would not put Bigfoot out there with breast on. It wouldn't make sense.
Right. And then, of course they did compression tests on the footprints left by the subject in that film. And so the compression tests showed that whatever the subject was in that film weighed at least 800 pounds. You can't fake that.
There's a lot of analysis of the muscle movement also of that Patty in that film. And the muscle movement, just really, really analyzed at a minute detail, is very telling.
It is. Yeah, it really is. And you can see the muscles. You can see facial features to a degree now that they have a little bit better technology. So, and not only that, the gait of the subject of the film, it can't be recreated. I mean, there's just so many facts on and on about this thing, and I want to speak about what was it, Scott, doggone it, he just passed recently. Had his YouTube channel.
Oh, Scott Carpenter.
Scott Carpenter, yeah, I'm sorry. You talk about Scott Carpenter, and I never knew about Bobby Hill. And was it Bobby Hill, the lady that was talking to him about how the guys from Canada had come down, and it was basically that they had a shooting gallery, and those Bigfoots got killed there that day.
I don't know that story. Why don't you tell us about it?
So he speaks about it on one of his videos, but I never knew about it till then. But and Steve Istall talks about it. He talks about it too. But apparently there were basically a crew of guys put together from Canada, and they were called down by the lumber companies in the area of Bluff Creek, and they included Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin to be in there. Some people say that they were included in the thing, and some people say they just kind of came upon it by accident. But they talk about how they had these hunting dogs that were supposed to be the best in the world, and they shot a certain amount of Bigfoot that day, and it had happened before the film had happened, before the filming had happened, and Patty was getting away, was taken off from the scene, kind of thing. But
yeah, I think I interviewed. I didn't realize that was what you were talking about. I interviewed MK Davis, and he has a lot of information about that also.
I have seen that video of yours on that. I was going to mention that just now too, but yes, he's got a lot of knowledge on that, and man, if that was the case, I sure hope that didn't happen. But it's just more proof that something happened there that day.
Well, yeah, and being the analysis of the photography, and then also just his knowledge that there was so much more than was released to the public as far as the filming goes, too.
Right. I've probably seen that video, the one that you did with him. I've probably watched that over 10 times.
Well, I wish I would have asked more questions. It was all kind of a shock to me when we did because I'm fairly new in the Bigfoot subject matter. So when he started talking about this, I'm kind of like, what, and it was kind of a shock to me. I wish I would have asked more questions, even though everyone says I got more information out of him than a lot of people do. So I'm glad I did, but I would like to know more. I hope I can get another interview with him at some point.
I hope you can too, because I think he holds a lot of knowledge. He's very well respected, and I'm sure he was forthright with you because of the way that you are, and that's a big deal to a lot of people. So I mean, I'm sure that he would he wouldn't have a problem. Hopefully, he wouldn't have a problem doing another interview with you.
I stay in touch with him. Just, he's a friend of mine on Facebook, and I do, kind of stay in touch with him, but hopefully, yeah. There's so many people out there that hold little keys to more Bigfoot information. And, I think just putting this all together is difficult to do. But with every interview that I have, I get a little more of a piece of information about it.
Yeah, I do, and it is also, and I know you've heard this probably before. It's one of those things. The more you know, the less you understand or know.
It's a mystery, that's for sure. I mean, I didn't really think much about Bigfoot before I started doing these interviews, but it's certainly a mystery. And it mimics a lot of the mystery around like the UFO research that I have done for years. It's one of those things that's very elusive. People do have personal experiences. We know that there's something going on. We know there's something there for sure. But to get anything that's really concrete is a little less. It's elusive. It's a mystery.
Very much so, and to go off of what Ron Moorhead said, it's about I think it has a lot to do with your energy, your frequency. I do think if they're in your area and they're around you, I do believe they know how you feel, kind of that kind of thing, whether you have a good or bad intention, that kind of thing. So I do put a lot of stock in what he says as far as that kind of thing goes, as I believe it's true.
Yeah, I think he has a lot of experience with this, but also I think he's given in-depth consideration to a lot of it too, and that makes a difference. Going back to those feelings that you had, those few times that you had a feeling that you just shouldn't be here, or you had a feeling something was watching you. Have you had that experience in other circumstances besides just with Bigfoot?
Not really, no. I know. I mean, I know that UFOs exist and that we're not alone in that fact, but that they are here, that kind of thing. But I think if you're asking me, have I had a feeling of maybe an alien, that kind of thing, or a ghost, I'd have to say maybe ghost, yes, but not as far as alien type
Have you had a
things go.
ghost experience then? Have you had a ghost experience?
I have. Out here in Oklahoma, I was at one of my best friends out on his ranch, and this was a third generation, so his great grandparents had it, and so as a matter of fact, his grandpa died out on the ranch. So my friend and his wife, they were gone. They'd taken off to Kansas to go see some people. They wanted me and my wife to stay there overnight, kind of make sure everything was okay. He had cows at the time on the place, and so we went, and there was a really bad storm, super bad storm that night, and I just couldn't sleep, and so I was hearing things all over the place, which it was windy and there was lightning and there was a storm going on, but I had gotten up. I was going to go get something to drink, and I went through the hallway, and it takes you down to the living room, which takes you to the kitchen. And then there's another long hallway that goes down into the washroom and things of that nature, the laundry room and all that. And so I was standing in the kitchen, and I took a look to my left, and that's where the laundry room and all that kind of thing was. And it was a long, probably a good 30-foot room, but there's his grandpa right there in his overalls and his hat, and just, plain as day, there he was, and in his farmer's shirt under his overalls, and kind of freaked me out a little bit. And so, yeah, I didn't sleep the rest of that night.
Was that an isolated experience? The only time you've ever seen something like that?
Pretty much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard of very similar things to that, especially if they haven't been gone very long, if it's just been like a year or two, something like that, that there will be visuals that are very very much present. I've heard many stories like that.
I think he was gone probably at least 20 years by then, if not longer.
Well, it wasn't a new thing then at all.
No, I think it had been happening, and there was times that people didn't live at the ranch, so it was on and off, and then my friend had moved his family out there, and so he told me that there was things that he said he never seen his grandfather like that, but he said there was things that he had heard, just strange things that he heard in the house, kind of stuff, and but never saw a ghost.
No, nothing moving around or anything like that.
No, but now I used to go do a lot of squatching out there on that place because it's 1,500 acres, and um, I never really had anything happen. I never had an experience of any kind. I knew about stick structures by then, as this was only about 7 or 8 years ago. So I spent a lot of time out there on that place, and I never had anything happen.
Just that one isolated moment where you saw his grandfather.
Yeah,
Was his grandfather moving? Was he doing anything? Did he say anything to you?
he did. He kind of just walked a little, and then kind of went into a. He was just kind of gone, kind of thing, and I didn't stick around. I ran back to the bedroom, kind of told my wife what had happened, and she kind of thought I was just making up a story. I think, but when I told my buddy what I had seen, he said that was my grandpa. I mean, I described it down to the shirt, and that my grandpa had a shirt like that.
Yeah,
So,
that's funny, isn't it? Well, going
well,
back to your, go ahead.
I'm sorry, and the fact that he always had coveralls on, period, always, every day.
Yeah. So going back to your wife, was she comfortable on that land that you lived on, going out into the woods or anything, or was she a woods person?
After the vocalizations, or before, she doesn't have any problem with the woods. She grew up, her dad taking her into the woods and things of that nature, and so yeah, she didn't really have a problem. She loves getting out on the side by side and all that kind of thing. As far as going out and actual doing some squatching, she's not really interested in that, because she didn't believe in any of this until I came along. So um, I kind of like to say that she's a knower now, like me, and she's not just a person that's beyond skeptical. She didn't believe in any of that before I came into the picture, 17 years ago. So yeah.
So the mumbling didn't scare her enough to keep her out of the woods, at least.
No, no. I mean, we'll go on the side by side and things like that. But she's not going to go walking around or anything at night. But she's not going to do any of that.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I guess you could say, sure, she's scared somewhat, but if if she's with me, she's not really. It did scare her that night. She basically said the words, "You're taking me inside right now."
yeah. I don't blame her. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add to the interview?
Just the we didn't kind of really talk about the trail cam footage at my brother's,
Yeah, go ahead and talk about that.
which I don't. I'm sure. Did you watch that?
I did.
So I sent that to Doug Hycheck, and Doug told me, he said basically, I can't say it's not a Bigfoot. I can't say it's not a little rodent possibly that got up there, but again, my brother's 6 feet tall, and he put the camera on a tree at his chest for the purpose of animals not messing with it. But again, not to say that it couldn't have happened. Um, the thing that gets me about the trail cam footage is the fact that you can clearly see dust coming into the picture well before the subject of the trail cam footage gets in there. And to me, it kind of looks like it stops and turns towards the camera a little bit. and then turns back and moves on. So and this was, it was a little odd, because I was over at my brother's watching football, and he brings his laptop over and says, I need to show you something. And he was acting a little weird about it. He didn't really, he's like, this is strange. I don't know what the heck's on this thing, but I want to show you this. So I watched it about 100 times, to be honest with you. And I didn't know that I don't want to say he's a believer or a knower, but like me, but he's open to the idea that there is Bigfoot out there.
For sure. And yeah, it is really difficult to know for sure what it is, but I'm going to put this on the end of our interview and let the audience see it. And maybe we'll get some feedback on that through comments on the show.
Now, I never did. As far as afterwards, this was about 2 or 3 weeks after he got the trail cam footage when he showed it to me. I went out there anyway, and I tried to find, either tracks, or I was looking at trees to maybe even see, was there a hair sample of any kind. I was, I did a pretty in-depth looking into the whole area surrounding that tree. And I didn't find anything, but again, about 3 weeks later, so there's no telling if there would have been prints, and I don't know.
Exactly. Well, it's interesting, and I thank you for sending that and allowing us to look at it.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end our interview today. Thank you so much, Les, for coming on and sharing all this information. I so very much appreciate it. I know we're all going through kind of a little bit of an icy bad storm right now. I hope you make it through. We're just kind of borderline here, right at freezing. So trees are not going down yet.
Yeah, it's bad. I shut down the office today, so.
Well, it's the roads are kind of iffy out here this morning. So luckily I work from home, so I'm good. So I'll let you go, and yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate your work and everything you do, and you have some very very good information. You get very good people out there, and I for one appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate people like you. I wouldn't have a show without you coming on and talking. People have been very generous that way, and I hope we keep it up.
Okay, well, I hope for good things for you in the future.
Thank you so much. Take care.